Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us on the Morning Chalk Up's YouTube channel. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Today I'm joined by the CanWest Games event organizer, Mike McLean. First, thanks for just taking the time to come on the show and really have an open conversation about what's going on with some of these payouts and the delays with the CanWest Games, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I think we really just need to start at the beginning. First, how did your team come up with the prize purse of 105 over $105,000 and where was that money supposed to come from?
Yeah, yeah. So, we talked a lot about this, and, I think that when we conceived of this event and thought about what we wanted to do, we had this vision of a fairly substantial event. We liked the timing. We liked the fact that our event occurs a couple weeks after the last chance qualifier. My perception as a fan of the sport was that, the CrossFit Games will continue to attract the top 40 athletes. But as our athlete pool grows, there's certainly a lot more than 40 amazing athletes in our sport who would like an opportunity. So we felt like, if we could put together an event that would be attractive for elite athletes, that would be a positive part of the growth of the sport at that time of the year. And we settled on $105,000 as a prize purse based on a lot of sort of budgeting and going back and forth and looking what we thought our revenue streams would be and our expense streams. One of the things I've said a couple times, I'm fairly new to the event space. We bought this business less than a year ago. One of my partners has got lots of event experience, but not CrossFit or CrossFit competition specifically. So one of the things that we quickly realized is we have to make a lot of commitments on the expense side of the event before we really ever solidify the revenue side of the event. And so a lot of it was just speculation, but we did not do this lightly. We went through the budget many times. We reviewed every component of our revenue expectations as well as our expenses. And that's really what led us to believe, Lauren, that $105,000 was a reasonable, attainable prize purse to offer for this event.
Then when going through the budget and really laying out all of the finances, like the money that's coming in versus the money that you guys have to spend, was most of that prize purse pot reliant on ticket sales?
It wasn't. And I noted that in a previous edition that you've done. I think it was maybe Justin or Emily or maybe you talked about that. Is that a reasonable way to tie it? We had some conversations about that. I really liked how Rogue did it. I really thought that was a smart way to, really give the athletes a chance to show their stuff and have the fans appreciate that and have the athletes get compensated for that. We looked at that, but ultimately we decided against a direct link between the ticket sales and the prize purse because we thought it was a little bit unknown at that time, and we wanted to have something more specific that we could offer the athletes.
Then where was most of the money supposed to come from to pay out the athletes?
Well, I mean, it was part of the overall expense budget, which was driven by the overall revenue budget. So, when Ben and EJ and I, my two partners, Ben and EJ and I, sort of sat down early in the year, and once we concluded our discussions with the previous owners to buy this event, we made some decisions on what we wanted this event to be and what the size of that could be. And so, we thought about an opportunity to provide an event for elite athletes, for sponsors to have another chance to communicate with their followers, with their community. We looked at all of that. So, the revenue was sort of general revenue pool.
Sorry, I don't ever run an event. So when it comes to like finances, like unless I see it in front of me, I have sometimes trouble conceptualizing it. So if it's not like from the ticket sales, like what are the different pockets that go into the pool of money?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So athlete registration, both for the qualifiers and for the main event itself, is part of the revenue pool. Sponsorship monies is part of the revenue pool, and ticket sales is part of the revenue pool. Those would probably be the three biggest buckets.
Okay. So were there other avenues that you guys explored to find other ways to get income to the athlete payouts?
Yeah. Not to get into the weeds too much, but another thing that we realized as we got a little bit deeper into the spring was that we had some good interest from a lot of big brands who said they like our event, they like the timing, they like the voice that we afford them. But unfortunately, many of these big brands, not surprisingly, have their full marketing budget committed by really Q4 of the previous year. And so that really impacted, again, not to get too deep into the weeds, but that really impacted that particular avenue of revenue for us. But really, that really impacted that for sure.
Sure. So then when the event took place in July, athletes originally were supposed to be paid before or within that 4 to 6 week window. Then I know you communicated a few times pushing back the timeline. Did
Yeah.
you know shortly after the event that the money just wasn't going to be there? Or what were some of the conversations that you were having with your team behind the scenes of finding ways to communicate with the athletes, but also pay them?
Yeah. So we knew really coming out of the event that we had far short, excuse me, of our revenue targets. Just backing up a minute, as a CrossFit fan, if someone had told me that at least in our general geographic region of the Northwest in Vancouver, Canada, if there was going to be an event with HWPO with Matt Fraser and Sammy there. The whole HWPO crew was amazing to work with. They were great. Having the caliber of athletes like Chandler Smith and Annika Greer, when I looked at some of the education opportunities that we offered, honestly, coming into the event, I expected a pretty strong response. I mean, really, Lauren, in a lot of ways, I influenced the building of this event based on what I would like to see. I really tried to create an avatar of myself or an example of myself, and having all these great opportunities. So anyway, to answer your question, coming out of the event, we knew we had a revenue problem. And so my first communication with the athletes was around payout timing, and that was true. We did have a delay in receiving a couple of different money streams. We had a delay in our ticket sales, just the spectator ticket sales, the partner that we used. There was a bit of a delay on that. But even coming out of that, we knew that there was a continued challenge. So I mean, it's a stressful time right now for us, for sure. We made a commitment based on good intentions, I think, to pay these athletes. We built a budget that didn't see us make any money, but we felt like this is our first year running this event, and that's our investment in the future. And unfortunately, just a lot of that has fallen short. So, instead of being part of the solution to creating a more professionalized sport, now I'm part of the problem. And that's very disappointing to me, right? We just didn't want to be in this situation where, an athlete like Logan Ewing or Jack Farlow or Chandler Smith or Annika Greer spent money out of their pockets to come to our event, and now they're net down. Right now they probably would have been better off staying at home, and I need to get them paid, and I feel a real burden around that obligation.
And I think that's the part that people are so frustrated about, right? Is they've invested hotels, flights,
Yeah.
stay, all of these different things, and they're still waiting on their money. So how do you then, as an event organizer, ensure that ultimately they do get paid? Because I think the last thing that you said is that the athletes would be paid in these percentages, but there's just no real timeline.
Yeah, and I wish I could give you a more accurate update on that. We're working on a number of different options to get that taken care of. And we, as hopefully you can tell, hopefully your listeners can tell, we take this obligation seriously. I'm not shirking from it. I'm not looking to hide. We're embarrassed for sure. And we're not happy that we're in this situation, and we're determined to find a way to get these athletes paid. I can't commit to a timeline right now because I don't have the specific answer, but we're not walking away from this.
So how do you feel like you can build trust with the athletes and people who, are looking for off-season competitions to compete with in the future, but people might still remember this?
They will remember this. Yeah, and I don't have an answer for that either. I mean, we thought a lot about that. I think that it's Rogue that gives a travel stipend. Maybe that's one option we need to consider. I think that there's an option to consider tying it directly to ticket sales, although in some ways, Lauren, I felt like that was a bit disingenuous, because at the end of the day, ticket sales just go into the overall revenue pot. So either you can afford to pay the athletes or you can't. It's really irrespective of where those revenues come from. That's been my thought. So yeah, I said to someone recently that we didn't come out of the gates really strong this event. We had some lingering issues from the past and pre-pandemic. So we fought through that as best we could, and tried to earn the trust of the athlete community. Now we've damaged it, and earning trust is hard. Regaining trust is brutal. So I don't know what the next 6 months hold for us. But right now our focus is really solely on getting these athletes repaid. And then we'll see about whether we can find a way to rebuild the trust or not.
How do you find money to get the athletes paid at this point?
Yeah, like I said, there's a few different options that we're considering. Don't really want to go into details right now, but we're looking at some different ways to do that for sure. And I hope again, the timing of our event and the platform that we can potentially create is a good one for our business partners. And so, they could potentially be part of the solution as we partner with different larger brands who the way the CrossFit Games work, of course, is they've got exclusive categories for some brands, and there's lots of other excellent companies within those categories that aren't able to really flourish within that CrossFit Games environment. So we're hoping we can offer them another platform as well. We're turning over every stone here that we can to find a way to get these athletes paid.
And you and your team also organize Can East, correct?
That's right.
What was the decision-making process when deciding to move on with that competition just a couple of weeks ago, when you know that with CanWest, you still have this big problem that you're trying to resolve?
Yeah. I mean, and I heard Emily talk about this in a previous show with you, and she was probably a little bit right. We had hoped to generate some profits out of that event and use that as part of the solution, to be quite honest with you. And unfortunately, that event lost a little bit of money as well. So again, we weren't able to turn that into a profit. We were able to execute a really well-run event. Just from a CrossFit competition perspective, I think we were within a few minutes of schedule the whole weekend. We're happy about that. It was a safe event, not to oversimplify it, but that was a big focus for us to make sure that athletes were safe. But yeah, the logic in running with that was really we believe that's an excellent potential property as well. That sort of hopefully someday larger early season North American event that we can offer to athletes and sponsors. And we just felt like we needed to continue to push forward. Not to oversimplify, Lauren, but we need to push forward as a company so that we can generate these funds to pay back the athletes. So we can't stop. If we stop, then there's nothing there.
We keep talking about how to get more more spectators into these off-season competitions, into those seats to watch. Have you and your team talked about ways that you can try to get more spectators? I know that it's not just you that deals with this problem. I mean, we even look at some of the attendance at semifinals this past season. I know that COVID kind of trickled into some of these years, but what are some possible solutions to getting more fans?
Yeah, we talk a lot about that as a team, and that went a lot into our planning of these events. And so, to differentiate a little bit between a CrossFit competition, so spectators watching a bunch of people exercising and friends and family from the gym and that kind of thing coming, as opposed to more of an event aspect where more Wadapalooza like, where there's not just CrossFit competition going on, there's other things to see and do, way more experiential. And so we talk a lot about the experience. We did a really significant redesign of the venue at CanWest this year, just based on that hope of creating a better experience, more to do, more exciting, more immersive for the fans. I think that's a big part of it. I think just, other than just having people sit in stands and watch people exercise, I think that's a big part of it. I think another lesson, another takeaway I had from the most recent CanWest Games event was that I need to do a better job, and my team needs to do a better job of really just the whole communication to the fitness oriented public at large. And I'll give you one example. So a few days before the event, we were doing a bit of running around, and we realized we were short a few bolts for the rig. Not to get too specific, but so I had to hop in my truck and go buy some bolts for the rig. So went to this local bolt store, hardware store, and got talking to the clerk. What are you doing? Are you in the movies? Because the movie industry is so predominant in Vancouver. Sure. I know we're doing a CrossFit competition. No, CrossFit, I've heard about that. So this guy didn't really do CrossFit, really good exercise. I said, yeah, and Matt Fraser's going to be there. He said, stop, wait a second. Matt Fraser's going to be in Vancouver. And I said, yeah, his whole team's going to be here. We got this, we got that. He said, oh man, I would have loved to come to that. I didn't even know it was on. And
Mm.
so a small anecdote, but that was interesting to me that, one of our takeaways for next year, again, to your question, how do we get more fans in the stands? With the television coverage, people are curious about CrossFit and what our athletes are able to do. And I think that we need to find ways to really communicate more effectively what's going on. I think that's the first thing. I know it's been talked a lot about as well, on your show and others. How do we make these events more viewable? Emily talked about her boyfriend. And that's so
Watching the CrossFit Games. Yep, yep.
that was a super interesting story. I love that. Her boyfriend's a sports fan, and he's
Yeah.
he's interested in this, and yet he had some questions around that. He believed that some events were more viewable, more watchable, than others, and I think that we want to continue to do that. And on my team, we were really conscious of. I talked earlier about the experience of the spectators and being more immersive. So we're really thoughtful and mindful of getting the athletes closer to the spectators and the spectators closer to the athletes in some of those key events. But I also think that we need to be really mindful of the viewability of these workouts. And I think CrossFit's made so much progress in the last few years in terms of really doing that, whether it's moving pylons or moving to different stations and showing who's actually in the lead when they're doing 500 burpees for time, right? Kind of doing a better job on that.
I mean, Mike, this is a conversation that we've been having a lot lately because the more stories we tell, the more people comment, and we're hearing about, other competitions who also haven't been able to pay out athletes at this point. What is your message to those people who have lost trust or are wondering what's going on, or just the whole conversation that's happening? What's your message?
Yeah. So, I mean, message number one: we did not enter into this with bad intentions. We weren't trying to lure anybody. The emotions that me and my team are feeling right now are not positive, and we did not wish this for us, right? So, not that that's any solace for these athletes. That doesn't help them right now, but I just want them to know that. The second part of it is that it's still our full intention to pay, and we're turning over every stone we can to find a way to pay them. Me and my team want to be part of the professionalization of our sport. And there's a lot of aspects of that. And I think it was Brian Friend who said on your show and maybe elsewhere recently that, if you pare away all the professionalization part of it, really it's about getting more money into the athlete's hands. And there's other aspects for sure. Some of the stuff that Brent's doing in terms of safety and, how high should the pull-up bars be and all that kind of thing. I mean, there's other aspects of professionalization, but we believe in the professionalization of our sport. And we hope that in the future we can be part of the solution. Right now, we're just part of the problem.
Well, Mike McLean, thank you so much for openly talking to us about this. We really appreciate your transparency, and good luck to you and the rest of your team.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for the time.